The truck's engine coughed and died right there on the dusty road, heat waves shimmering off the hood like a bad dream. I wiped the grease from my hands on my rag, squinting through the afternoon glare. That's when I saw her. An elegant woman stepping out, sunglasses hiding her eyes, her posture straight as a spine in a book. Recognition hit me hard. Lena Voss, the famous novelist, her face on every bestseller shelf. She was staring at me, right through the oil stains on my shirt, like I held some secret she needed. My pulse quickened. The air thickened with questions I couldn't voice. Why me? A nobody mechanic in this nowhere town? Dust settled as she approached the garage, her heels clicking on the gravel, pulling me into her world. The garage hummed with a low buzz of tools and radio static, my hands buried deep in the guts of an old Ford, fingers slick with oil and grit. The air smelled of metal and exhaust, the kind that clings to your skin like a second layer. I'd been at it since dawn, tuning the carburetor on this beast, when the tow truck rumbled in. They dropped off her vintage truck in the bay, chrome gleaming under the fluorescent lights, even after breaking down miles from the city. It was a beauty, all curves and history, like something from one of her stories. Polished on the outside, but hiding rough edges underneath. I straightened up, wiping my forehead with the back of my arm, when she walked in, on foot. No ride, just her. In a city coat that looked too fine for the dust swirling around rusted parts and oil drums stacked in the corner. The fabric caught the light, soft wool against the harsh clang of wrenches on the bench. She stood there a moment, scanning the space, her presence cutting through the noise like a quiet command. How long until it's fixed? Her voice was low, measured, like she was choosing each word from a draft. Her eyes lingered on my calloused fingers, still marked with black streaks, as if they told her more than the truck ever could. I set down the socket wrench, feeling the weight of her scrutiny settle over me, stirring something uneasy in my chest. Carburetor's clogged bad. Looks like it's been running on fumes for too long. I can have it done in a few days, maybe less if the part comes quick. My words came out steady, but her gaze held, unblinking behind those dark lenses. She nodded slowly, slipping off the sunglasses. Guarded hazel eyes met mine, searching too long, like she was reading lines between the grease and sweat. The garage felt smaller then, the radio static fading under the thud of my own heartbeat. I shifted, grabbing a rag to busy my hands, but the silence stretched, heavy as engine heat rising from the floor. The phone rang then, shrill and breaking the moment. I turned to answer it, something about a pickup for Old Man Hargrove's sedan. But her presence lingered. It pressed against the walls, warm and insistent, long after the call ended. I glanced back, and she was still there, arms crossed, watching the truck like it held her next chapter. Days passed with that truck in the bay. I worked it over piece by piece, the scent of solvent sharp in the air, my muscles aching from the lift. But Lena returned unexpectedly one afternoon, the scent of rain on her skin cutting through the garage fumes like a fresh page. She'd been gone, holed up somewhere in town for her research, or so the whispers said. But there she was, stepping through the open door as thunder grumbled outside. Rain pelted the tin roof like fingers drumming impatience, each drop thudding through the dim garage. I hunched over Lena's truck engine, the welder's sparks lighting the space in sharp bursts of blue-white, shadows dancing on the oil-stained concrete. The air hung heavy with wet metal and ozone, my gloves slick against the tools, breath fogging slightly in the chill that seeped through the open bay door. Closing time had come and gone. The clock ticked past 7, but the part I needed was delayed, leaving me to patch what I could under the flickering fluorescent hum. She appeared then, a silhouette against the storm's gray, soaked through, her coat clinging like a second skin. Water dripped from her dark hair, pooling at her feet as she stepped inside, holding a thermos like an offering from some forgotten ritual. The scent of hot coffee cut through the rain's clean bite, warm and grounding amid the garage's sharp edges. "You're still here." Her voice carried over the roof's tattoo, low but clear. Eyes meeting mine without the sunglasses this time. Hazel and direct, softened by the wet. I set the welder down, sparks fading to embers in my mind. Part's late, can't leave it half done. I pulled off my gloves, the leather creaking, and nodded at the thermos. "What's that?" She unscrewed the lid, steam rising in lazy curls. "Coffee. Figured you'd need it, working late like this." She poured into the cap, handed it over. I accepted, the warmth seeping through my fingers, chasing the cold from my bones. Our hands brushed, electric, unintended, a jolt that lingered in my palm like static from the welder. I froze for a beat, but she didn't pull away fast, her skin cool from the rain. She explained then, leaning against a workbench, water beading on the wood. Stuck in town for research, she said, voice steady but edged with something urgent. Her latest book needed authenticity, small-town grit she couldn't fake from the city. But the deadline loomed, tight as a rusted bolt, and without the truck, she was stranded, ideas piling up like unread drafts. I sipped the coffee, bitter and strong, letting it settle the knot in my chest. Research, huh? This place isn't much for inspiration unless you like dust and diesel. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. She asked about the town then, questions probing yet soft, like testing cracked earth for hidden water. How long I'd lived here, why I stayed. Her eyes followed my hands as I gestured, tracing the scars from years of wrenches and wires. I told her about the slow pulse of the place, the diner where folks swap stories over pie, the river that swelled in spring, carrying silt from upstream. My life here felt small under her gaze, but her nods pulled more out. Why mechanics? She pressed, tilting her head, rain still dripping from her coat. I shrugged, setting the empty cap down. Engines don't lie. They break, you fix them. Simple. Then I shared the story of my first one, at 16, in my uncle's shed. The old Chevy pickup, coughed like a dying animal. I stayed up nights, hands black with grease, until it roared back to life. That sound, pure, rumbling truth. Felt like mending something broken in me, too. She laughed then, rare and genuine, the sound echoing off the concrete walls, cutting through the rain's steady beat. It warmed the space, her face lighting in the dim, guarded edges softening just a fraction. We talked longer than I meant, the storm easing outside, her notebook appearing from her bag, scribbled full with quick strokes, notes on the town's rhythm, my words woven in. Night fell heavy, stars hidden behind clouds as she gathered her things. Thanks for this, she said, pausing at the door, her stare holding mine a second too long. It followed me home, through the wet drive, settling in my chest like an unanswered question. The truck was nearly ready the next day, engine purring smooth. But that delayed part held us back. Lena's visits became routine, slipping in during lulls, the garage feeling smaller each time, walls closing with the weight of her presence. Sun beat down relentless, turning the garage into a furnace, the fan whirring lazy against the summer stickiness that clung to everything. Sweat traced slow paths down my spine, soaking through my shirt as I wrestled with the truck's wiring under the hood. The part delay stretched another week. Supply chain snag from the city, they said. But Lena's visits filled the gaps, turning routine into something heavier. She'd slip in during lunch breaks, when the heat peaked and the radio played faint country twang, perching on a stool by the workbench, watching me work with that quiet intensity, her eyes following each twist of my wrench like she was memorizing the motion. At first, it unsettled me, that gaze pulling at edges I kept tucked away. But she started talking, words careful, like handing over fragments of glass that might cut if dropped. Her books, she said, the ones that lined shelves in places I'd never see. Stories of fractured lives, women chasing shadows in big cities. Fame wrapped around her like isolation, she admitted one afternoon, voice low over the fan's hum. Crowds at signings, questions that never touched the core, leaving her hollow after the applause faded. It's like being seen without being known, she murmured, fingers tracing a seam on the stool, hazel eyes distant, reflecting the glare off the concrete. I nodded, wiping sweat from my brow, the salt stinging my eyes. The town's slow rhythm suited me, I told her. Days marked by the rise and set of the sun, folks coming and going with their troubles. Engines told stories too, I said, leaning against the truck's fender, the metal warm under my palm. A loose belt from a hurried farmer's drive, rust from years parked in regret. You can hear it all if you listen, I added, voice rough from the dust. Her head tilted, absorbing it, a small nod that felt like she was filing it away for later. When she spoke of her characters, her hands came alive, gesturing animated in the thick air, palms slicing through descriptions of women on the edge, lovers parted by ambition, secrets buried under polished lives. Vulnerability slipped through then, cracking her facade just enough to glimpse the woman behind the name on the cover. Her laugh came rare, But when it did, over a tale of a plot twist gone wrong, it echoed soft against the tools, warming the space like a breeze off the river. One day, mid-lunch, the wiring sparked trouble. A loose connection in the dash, flickering lights that wouldn't hold. I reached in, shoulders brushing hers as she leaned close to see, the air charging thick with unsaid tension, her breath steady near my ear. Our arms pressed, skin slick with heat, and for a moment, the garage narrowed to that point of contact, pulse thudding in my veins. She didn't move away, her fingers hovering near the panel, as if ready to help, but we both knew it was more. I fixed it quick, the wire snapping into place, but the spark lingered, humming low. She left that afternoon with the sun dipping lower, but not before placing a book on the workbench. A signed copy, her name scrawled inside, pages marked with notes in her tight script. They felt personal. Underlined passages about quiet revelations, women finding strength in the ordinary. I traced the ink later, alone with the fan's drone, wondering if she saw that in me. The grease, the steady hands, the life rooted here. The delays dragged, but her presence wove in deeper, threads pulling tight. Engine roared to life successfully that evening, a deep rumble shaking the bay. But Lena insisted on a test drive, gravel crunching under tires as we headed out, the open road pulling us forward. The truck rumbled to life under my hands, a deep growl vibrating through the frame, smooth now after days of coaxing. Lena stood by the open door, her fingers trailing the chrome edge, eyes on the horizon where the sun hung low, painting the hills in gold. "Let's take her out," she said, voice steady, slipping into the passenger seat before I could protest. Gravel crunched under the tires as we pulled from the bay, the garage shrinking in the rear view, dust clouds rising behind us like a farewell. The back roads stretched empty, winding through fields where grass bent under the late breeze, wind whipping through the open windows, tugging at my hair and carrying the scent of dry earth and wildflowers. She directed me with quiet words, pointing left at the fork, then right, her profile sharp against the rolling hills, jaw set like she knew this path from some half-written scene. The cab felt close, leather seats worn soft, her coat folded neat on the seat between us. We climbed higher, the engine steady, until she nodded at a secluded overlook, gravel lot edged by scrub pine. I eased the truck to a stop, dust settling slow, the world dropping away below. Town lights faint, river glinting like a silver thread. Conversation started light, engine hum filling the pauses, but it turned personal as the sun dipped, shadows lengthening across the dash. She spoke of city escapes first, her voice low over the cooling ticks of metal. Late nights in high-rises, escaping crowds that pressed too close, words that never reached her. "It's all surface there," she said, fingers drumming the armrest, hazel eyes on the hills. "People see the name, not the woman writing it." I gripped the wheel, feeling the pull of her words, the way they echoed my own quiet days. I shared then, rooted solitude after family losses. The ache of my mother's passing, the garage left to me like an anchor. "Staying here keeps me steady," I admitted, voice rough against the wind dying outside. No running, just fixing what breaks. Her gaze shifted to me, steady, absorbing the weight of it, the cab warming with shared breath. The engine stuttered once, a hiccup in the quiet, gauge flickering as if testing us. I reached for the dash, hands steadying the switch, but hers met mine, palms pressing in the tight space, skin warm and sure against my calluses. Time slowed, her fingers curling slight, the stutter fading under our touch, but the charge lingered, electric in the air between seats. She didn't pull away quick, eyes meeting mine, a question unspoken in the hazel depths. Writer's block came up next, her admission slipping out like a confession. "Words won't come," she said, eyes distant like storm clouds gathering over the valley. "The stories pile up, but they feel hollow, like I'm chasing shadows I can't catch." Her voice cracked soft, vulnerability raw in the fading light, hands folding tight in her lap. I described the satisfaction of mending broken things then, leaning back, the overlook's hush wrapping us. "It's in the feel," I said. "The way a part clicks right, engine breathing easy again. That moment when it's whole." Her gaze softened, mirroring back, the guarded lines easing, like my words touched something stuck inside her. We sat there, engine cooling, the world outside blurring to dusk's purple edge. Return to the garage came slow, headlights cutting the dim, silence thick as oil in the lines. She stared longer than necessary, holding mine across the cab, the weight of it settling deep. Repair was complete, but she extended her stay. Evenings pulling us to the local diner after, neon flickering on worn booths, the night unfolding warmer. The diner's neon sign buzzed faint against the humid night, casting red glows on the parking lot gravel. We slid into a booth near the back, vinyl sticking to my skin through my shirt, the air thick with grease and coffee grounds. Lena settled across from me, her elbows on the scarred table, steam curling from our mugs like unspoken thoughts rising slow. The place hummed low, forks clinking on plates, murmurs from truckers at the counter, the jukebox crooning an old ballad about lost roads. Nights like this stretched after the garage closed, her truck parked out front now, engine purring reliable. But she lingered in town, claiming more research time. She pulled a napkin from the dispenser, pencil appearing from her pocket, sketching quick lines, curves of faces, jagged paths that twisted like plot threads. This scene, she said, voice soft over the steam. 2 women at a crossroads, one rooted, one running. Her words wove the twists, echoes of her guarded heart slipping through, betrayals masked as ambition, silences that built walls higher than city towers. I watched her hand move, steady but tense, the pencil lead scraping faint, revealing fragments she kept locked in drafts. Her eyes lifted now and then, checking my face, like testing if the story landed. The clatter of dishes pulled me back, waitress sliding plates our way, fries crisp and salted, pie slices steaming. I picked at mine, the fork cold in my grip, and opened up then, voice low against the diner's rhythm. Past heartbreaks tumbled out, rough edges I'd smoothed over years. A woman from the next town over, gone after the floods took the bridge, leaving notes that faded like ink in rain. Another, city-bound, who promised returns that never came, her absence carving hollows I filled with wrench turns. Lena listened fierce, fork paused midair, hazel eyes locked on mine, absorbing each word like fuel for her pages. No interruptions, just nods that urged more, her presence a steady anchor in the booth's dim light. Under the table, her foot brushed mine. Accidental at first, boot against boot in the tight space. But it lingered, pressure soft yet insistent, heat rising unbidden through denim. My breath caught, the contact sparking low in my chest, unspoken pull tightening the air between us. She didn't shift away, her gaze holding steady over the mug's rim, a flicker of intent in the hazel depths. The diner's hum faded, narrowing to that point, the vinyl creaking as I leaned forward, slight, pulse thudding against my ribs. Town whispers reached me by day. Folks at the gas station eyeing her truck, murmurs about the city woman and the local mechanic, questions laced with curiosity sharp as gravel under tires. "What's she want with you?" old Hargrove asked once, wiping his hands on a rag, his squint knowing. I shrugged it off, but it gnawed, the weight of eyes on us growing with each evening here. Lena seemed unaware, or chose not to care, her focus on the napkin sketches, the pie crumbs we shared. I asked about leaving one night as the jukebox wound down, words careful over cooling coffee. "Deadlines close. When do you head back?" Her fingers traced the mug's rim, slow circles in the ceramic, deflecting with a half smile. "The story's not done here," she said, eyes meeting mine with intent, guarded but warm, like sunlight breaking clouds. No promises, just that look, pulling me deeper into the unsaid. We walked her back after, stars sharp overhead, gravel crunching under our steps along the dim path to her rented room above the hardware store. The night air cooled the humid cling, crickets humming low, her shoulder close enough that our hands nearly touched, fingers brushing air, the almost contact electric in the dark. She paused at the door, key turning slow, her stare lingering one beat longer, secrets hovering unspoken. Storm hit town hard the next week. Power out across the lines, wind howling. Lena sought shelter at my small house, rain lashing windows like urgent knocks. Thunder rolled deep through the valley, shaking the cabin's thin walls, the kind of rumble that settled in your bones like an old ache. Power flickered out just after dark, leaving the place swallowed in black except for the lantern's soft flicker on the kitchen table, shadows stretching long across the rough-hewn floors. Wood creaked under the wind's push, branches scraping the windows like fingers testing locks. I sat by the stove, flames low in the iron belly, the air chill despite the heat it threw, carrying the sharp tang of pine from outside. Rain lashed the panes in sheets, urgent and relentless, turning the world to a blurred roar. I'd been alone with storms like this before, the isolation a familiar wrap, but tonight it felt heavier, the thunder echoing the pull in my chest from our diner nights. A knock cut through the howl, sharp, hesitant. I opened the door to Lena, drenched head to toe, her coat dripping steady on the porch boards, pooling dark at her feet. Wind whipped her hair across her face, but her eyes were wide, unmasked need in the hazel depths, raw without the city's polish. "Power's out at the room," she said, voice barely above the gale, teeth chattering slight. "Can I—" I stepped aside quick, the chill rushing in with her, water trailing across the threshold. She shrugged off the coat, hanging it by the door, steam rising faint from her clothes in the lantern's glow. Her shirt clung, outlining the shiver running through her frame, arms wrapping tight around herself. I nodded to the stove, busying my hands to steady the sudden closeness. "Tea'll warm you." The kettle sang soon, water bubbling over the flame, and I poured steaming mugs, the herbal scent, chamomile from my untold tin, fogging the air between us. She took hers close, fingers wrapping the ceramic, her form huddled near the heat, close enough that I felt the chill radiating off her skin, pulling me nearer without a word. We settled on the couch after, mugs balanced on knees, the lantern casting warm pools on the worn cushions. Stories flowed then, easy in the storm's cocoon, words spilling like the rain outside. She spoke of fame's price first, voice low over the thunder's growl. Crowds that swallowed her whole at readings, faces blurring into expectation. Isolation sharper in the throng than any empty room. "They want the stories," she said, eyes on the flickering light, but not the mess behind them. It's like shouting into echo. Her words hung, vulnerability threading through, the guarded writer cracking open in the dim. I shared my choice to stay, the healing and hands-on work that grounded me after losses piled high. "Fixing engines mends something in me, too," I admitted, the lantern's flame dancing in her gaze. "The click of parts fitting right, it's truth you can touch." Thunder cracked close, lightning flashing white through the windows, revealing her face in stark relief. Lines soft, hazel eyes raw, pulling me nearer like gravity shifting. The air thickened, her shiver easing but the warmth between us building slow, unspoken. She set her mug down, the clink faint, and I fetched the blanket from the chair, wool heavy and threaded from years. We shared it, draped across our laps, shoulders touching light at first, then pressing steady, the fabric trapping heat that seeped through shirts. Silence fell, full of shifting warmth, her breath sinking with mine, the storm's roar fading to a steady patter. No words needed. The contact said enough. Electric under the calm, her head tilting near my shoulder, scent of rain and chamomile mingling close. Storm eased at dawn, gray light filtering through rain-streaked glass, the winds howl down to whispers. But she stayed, blanket pooled around us, gaze holding secrets yet to unfold. Hazel steady on mine, the cabin warmer than the fire alone. Days blended into routine after, her presence weaving through my mornings at the garage. But a trip to the city for parts tested the fragile pull between us. Exhaust and crowds waiting to strain the quiet we'd built. City streets buzzed chaotic under the midday glare, horns blaring sharp against the thick exhaust that hung like a haze, choking the air with diesel and heat. My boots thudded heavy on the sidewalks, out of place amid the sleek crowds rushing past, women in tailored coats, heels clicking fast, briefcases swinging like pendulums. We'd driven in early for the part, Lena's truck humming steady on the highway, But the city swallowed us whole once we parked, its pulse too quick for the quiet rhythm I'd known. She navigated the blocks with ease, her hand light on my arm now and then, guiding me through the throng, her scent, faint lavender cutting the fumes, the only anchor in the swirl. We reached her high-rise by noon, the building looming glass and steel, reflecting the sky in cold shards. The lobby hummed with polished marble and the soft chime of elevators, my reflection distorted in the doors, grease still faint under my nails despite scrubbing. She swiped a keycard, the doors sliding silent, pulling us up floors that blurred past in a rush. Her apartment opened wide when we stepped in, windows framing the sprawl below, bookshelves towering floor to ceiling like walls of her mind, spines crammed tight, colors bleeding into chaos, manuscripts stacked in corners, yellowed at edges. She led me to the desk first, fingers trailing the wood worn smooth from years of drafts. "This is where it happens," she said, voice low, pulling a stack of pages from a drawer. The words spilled then, confessions of doubt in her craft, her fingers trembling slight as she flipped sheets. The stories start strong, but they fray. Characters I can't reach, plots that loop endless. Her voice cracked soft on the last, hazel eyes dropping to the pages, vulnerability raw in the sun streaming through glass. I stood close, the room's hush amplifying the ache in her tone. Her world so vast yet tangled, pulling at the threads I'd only glimpsed back home. I felt small there, the grease under my nails a stark mark against her polished shelves, questions gnawing inside like rust on metal. How did I fit in this? My hands built things steady, engines that ran true. But here the air felt fragile, words stacking higher than any lift in the garage. She caught my gaze, setting the pages down, her shoulder brushing mine as she moved to the window. The city stretched endless below, a web of lights waiting to flicker on, and I wondered if my small-town roots could bridge it, or if they'd snap under the weight. Lunch pulled us out to a quiet cafe tucked in a side street, away from the main rush, the bell tinkling soft as we entered. Tables dotted the space, white cloths crisp, the scent of fresh bread and espresso grounding the noise filtering from outside. We slid into a corner booth, menus simple, her ordering a salad and coffee with that measured calm. The food came quick, plates steaming faint, but my fork paused as doubts swirled thicker. She reached across then, her hand covering mine over the tablecloth, warm palm anchoring amid the distant clatter of cups. Fingers laced light, her thumb tracing my knuckles, the touch steady against the city's hum seeping through the glass. "You're here," she murmured, eyes meeting mine, the gesture quieting the gnaw for a breath, her skin soft against my calluses. The return drive stretched tense, highway lights blurring as dusk fell, the truck's cab close with unspoken words hanging heavy. She stared through the rear view now and then, hazel catching mine in flickers, the silence thick as the exhaust we'd left behind. My hands gripped the wheel, the part secured in the back, but the city's pull lingered, questions churning. Her world of drafts and deadlines, mine of grease and gravel. Could we meet in the middle? Or would the distance widen? Back in town that night, the air cooler, stars pricking the dark sky, distance grew in my chest anyway. The garage loomed quiet as we parked, her truck safe now, but I wondered if this bridge we'd built would hold, fragile against the pull of her leaving. Conflict brewed as her deadline neared. A heated argument in the garage exposed fears, tools clattering under the weight of truths we'd held back. Garage shadows stretched long across the concrete at evening, the sun dipping low and casting everything in bruised orange. Tools lay scattered from my rushed work on Hargrove's old sedan, wrenches and sockets glinting dull amid the oil smears, the air thick with the tang of fresh welds and cooling metal. I'd been at it all day, hands aching from the torque, mind tangled in the city's echo. Those towering shelves, her confessions, hanging like smoke. Lena burst in then, door banging against the wall, her steps sharp on the grit-strewn floor. Deadline pressure mounted in her frame, shoulders tight as coiled springs, frustration lacing her words like oil slicking water, dark and unyielding. "You haven't heard from the publisher?" Her voice cut over the sedan's low hum, engine idling rough as I tested the timing. She paced the bay, heels scraping faint, arms folding tight across her chest. Notebook clutched in one hand, pages creased from her grip, the other raking through her hair. "They want revisions by week's end, but I can't. Everything's stalled here. This town, this..." She trailed off, eyes flashing to me. accusation unspoken but heavy. I killed the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying her words, my rag twisting in my fists. Heat rose in my chest, the day's sweat mixing with something sharper. Stalled? You mean me? This place that's kept you fed with stories? My voice rose, echoing off the rafters, challenging the walls she'd built so careful. Hearts laid bare in the dim, no more diner glances or storm silences to hide behind. You've been probing, watching, but you hold back like I'm just another plot point, guarded as a locked engine block. She stopped pacing, facing me square, hazel eyes stormy, lightning in the gathering dusk. You think it's easy? Pouring out doubts in your world where things click, fixed? Frustration cracked then, her breath short, revealing past betrayals in love. Women who'd chased her fame like a prize, then fled when the isolation bled through. One took my words for her own shine, left me hollow in a hotel room. Another promised roots, but city lights pulled her back, scars I carry like bad drafts. Her voice broke, mirroring my own hidden marks. The losses that rooted me here, loves that rusted out under pressure, leaving me to mend alone. The argument peaked, words clashing like gears stripping, my hands clenching at my sides, knuckles white against the workbench edge. She stepped closer, breath ragged, the air electric with the unsaid we'd danced around. Then it shifted, her fist uncurled, reaching, tentative, fingers brushing my arm, the touch soft as a loose wire settling. I caught her hand, calluses rough against her skin, the bridge forming slow in that grip, tension thawing like frost under sun. Apology came in whispers, her voice low against my ear. I didn't mean to push you away. This, us, it's real. Scarier than any blank page. Her head dropped to my shoulder, weight warm and trusting, the garage's chill easing in the contact. Air still charged, but softer now, humming like a tuned ignition. Night wrapped around us as we stood there, commitment flickering faint like a newly sparked plug, steady against the dark. Resolution builds as she chooses to stay. Final moments seal the slow burn connection. The morning light slanted sharp through the garage windows, dust motes swirling like unsettled thoughts in the beam. Lena's truck sat packed in the bay, bag strapped tight in the back, engine idling low, a steady rumble that mocked the knot twisting in my gut. She'd been quiet all week since our argument, words measured, touches fleeting, but the deadline had won out, pulling her back to the city and its waiting drafts. I wiped my hands on a rag, grease streaking the cloth black, watching her from the workbench as she checked the mirrors one last time. Her coat hung open, notebook tucked under her arm, but her steps to the door faltered, heels scraping faint on the concrete. She hesitated there, hand on the frame, hazel eyes searching mine across the space, raw and unguarded, like the storm had stripped away the last layers. I set the rag down, the thud heavy in the quiet hum. You're really going? It wasn't a question, but my voice came out rough, fears spilling over the edge, worlds apart, her high-rises and spotlights swallowing the gravel paths and garage lights I'd known. This town's too small for your stories. You'll forget the rust and the rain. My hands reached for hers anyway, greasy palms hovering, then closing gentle around her fingers, the contrast stark, calluses rough against her smooth skin, oil smearing faint on her knuckles. The contact grounded me, her warmth seeping through, but the ache lingered, bridge we'd mended feeling fragile under the truck's waiting growl. She turned fully then, eyes locking steady, the hesitation cracking into something deliberate. It's not the town I'm leaving behind. Her words came slow, measured like lines from a final chapter, pulling me closer without force. You see me. The mess, the blocks, the woman who stares too long because she can't look away. Confession hung in the air, her free hand rising to my cheek, thumb tracing the line of my jaw, soft against the day's stubble. The garage narrowed to us, tools forgotten on the bench, her breath warm near my ear. She pulled me into embrace amid the clutter, arms wrapping tight, her body fitting against mine. Coat fabric brushing my shirt, heartbeat thudding shared through the press. Vulnerability poured out, no more guarded drafts. Just her, real and close. The scent of lavender and faint city lingering on her skin. The kiss started tentative, lips brushing light, testing like a loose wire before it connects. Mine met hers, hesitant, salt of doubts tracing the edges, tears unshed from the weak strain, the fear of losing this pull we'd built slow. But it deepened quick, her mouth warm and insistent, hands tangling in my hair, pulling me under. I tasted the raw edge of her, coffee from morning and the deeper tang of relief, doubts washing away in the heat. My arms tightened around her waist, grease marking her coat, the world blurring to the rhythm of our breaths sinking, the truck's idle fading distant. Time stretched in that bay, charged and full, her body yielding soft against the hard lines of mine, the embrace sealing what words couldn't. She pulled back, breathless, forehead to mine, eyes shining in the light. I'm staying. Simple, no elaboration, but the weight settled true. She turned to the truck then, hands quick on the straps, unpacking bags one by one, manuscripts tumbling out, clothes folding back into the rented room upstairs. The story unfolding here, with me, in the grit and quiet, her choice anchoring deeper than any city skyline. I watched, rag forgotten, the garage filling with her presence again, steady as an engine tuned right. We drove out later that afternoon, not to leave but to test the roads together. Town stretching ahead in the rear view, shared future winding through the hills, gravel steady under tires. Her hand slipped into mine on the porch that night, fingers lacing warm, stars sharp overhead piercing the dark like fresh ink on page. The world felt steady now, rooted in the quiet we'd claimed. If this pull of unexpected love resonates, subscribe for more stories that linger. Share in comments. When did a stranger's gaze change everything for you?